family. Now, I know your both parents are highly educated, but I couldn't quite get my head around. One of them's a nuclear.
My father is a nuclear engineer. My mother is a computer engineer.
And they came from. When did they come?
We moved in '94 to the outskirts of Toronto, and I was 3 at that time because of the war. The war was breaking out, which started, I believe, maybe around 91, 92. I never really got too seriously to Montenegro, but my father had been in the late '80s to Boston before doing his thesis for his PhD. So he got a little bit of a sense of the life, and Canada was a great opportunity because they felt like there was demand for their professions as engineers at that time, and even though they actually suggested to me, my brother, and my sister that we don't go into engineering, they said it's too much work. But
isn't it funny? All his parents always
contradict themselves.
They always say the same thing.
They always contradict. They've probably done it for too long. But yeah, so we moved there in '94, and we all moved there. All 5 of us, my brother and my sister as well. My sister moved back after she finished high school, so I believe that was in '97, '98. Okay. She moved back to Montenegro. She wanted to do university there. The difference for me compared to them, my sister's 12 years older than me. My brother's 9 years older than me. So they already had a life there when we moved. I didn't. I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
So they went back every single summer they could. They would spend the summers in Montenegro, and
so it felt like home for them.
That was more homely for them and friends there. And it was a very different thing. Like growing up in Canada, you don't see kids outside without their parents too late at night. Whereas in Montenegro, the kids come back 10, 11 at night. People you don't ask. You're playing outside in front of the building or whatever. Obviously, the standard of life was much lower, but it was just a bit more freedom for kids at that age. So my sister went back for university, and then she came back because she got a scholarship and did her master's in Canada for 2 years. And then she moved back because she started a family shortly after. I think she came back around 2006.
What did she do? What did she study?
She's studying international economics.
Okay.
My brother...
what does he study? What does he do?
My brother, that's something around telecommunications.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure why. But he finished all the way. He went all the way through university in Toronto. Worked a few years in Canada and then moved in 2008. And now he has happily married and has a little daughter, just over a year old, in Montenegro. So both my brother and sister actually live in Montenegro at this time. My parents live in Canada, still in Toronto, the house where we grew up, and they're both retired now, so they travel quite a bit. They either chase me around the world or they go and chase my brother and sister around to help with the grandkids.
Nice.
So that's their biggest joy at this moment, let's say.
As a grandfather, I can highly recommend that. Hand the kids back. I know it's stating the obvious, but it's actually true.
My mom's a lot more into it than my father. My father will come to more tournaments. My mom will go more for the grandkids.
So your family, they're very obviously very highly educated and very achieved a lot. I mean, was that sort of something that was? We often see of immigrants coming into a country and this is your chance to make a difference.
Yeah, I think
sort of along those lines. Was it sort of high? You got the impression or
the motivation
that you
should
be achieving?
Well, they always expected a lot from us. In the sense of it was very different for my brother and sister because at that point my parents came over with just enough money to not be considered refugees. So they couldn't really provide them with much. The most they really provided them with was the trips back home and let them spend the summers in Montenegro. Obviously, they developed their careers much more by the time I started getting into tennis.
How was their English when they came across?
That's from what I remember, it's okay. My father still asks me sometimes when there needs to be an email written, like, can you help me write an email?
Right.
So I'm sure it was that way back. It was. They didn't really speak any English, and there's always this ongoing joke, and I don't know how serious my parents are about it, but it was between Canada and Australia when they moved, and Australia, the issue was that the immigration forms was 20 pages, Canada was 1 page. So that's an ongoing joke, and I'm pretty sure that's where it sort of ends. But
I got to be honest. If you came to Australia, you'd be playing Aussie rules football with your height. And you know anything about Aussie rules football?
I know it a bit, but I don't think my parents would have put me in that. I think that's a big aspect of it. I remember I wanted to play hockey because I was playing a lot of street hockey, and my parents never signed me up to play like league hockey or ice hockey. So I'm one of the very few Canadians that's probably never skated on ice.
Right. Oh, okay.
So
it's street hockey, did you say?
So yeah, you play on rollerblades and the driveways.
Okay.
At home. So I would play that, but I don't think I've never really played in a team sport game.
No, basketball?
Basketball, the closest thing is the celebrity game. Okay. That's the only thing I've ever played 5-on-5 basketball. The only time in my life. I love to play basketball, but that's the only time I've ever played with any kind of structure. Yeah.
What about high school? Was it just tennis? Or
tennis. It was just tennis. I went to tennis from 6 to 8 in the morning, and then at first when I started, I would go at 9 to 11 because my family couldn't afford the courts, and that was the downtime when the court fees were the cheapest. So my father struck a deal with the club that was close to my home. And after, when I was sort of in the group and sort of establishing myself, I would go tennis 6 to 8 and around 2 to 6 in the afternoon after school, straight after school.
So you went in with a local tennis coach?
Yeah, well, I went with the local tennis coach that actually coached me for the first 7 years, Casey Curtis. Okay. And he sort of set up a lot of the groundwork for me. And
he did a good job with your technique.
Yeah, he took a lot of good care of me, spent a lot of time with me one-on-one.
Where did the drive come from? Because obviously a lot of kids in their teenage years, they're hanging out with their friends, they're playing computer games, and obviously you made a huge amount of sacrifices, spending hours a day on the tennis court. It
never felt like a sacrifice. It's just what I wanted to do. And I think you're a lot more impulsive when you're a kid, so it's about what you want to do. And my parents' only rule was I had to be an honors student. And I could play as much tennis as I would like. And
that's a bit of pressure. Were you a good student? I'm guessing.
Yeah, I was. And I was always taking the shortcuts.
And you're still taking the shortcuts?
And
shortcuts, you mean you didn't
shortcuts,
do your homework?
No, I would do my homework, but my father's way, because he was a professor back in Montenegro, was that if there was a test to study for in math, he would look at what we needed to know. He'd write out one question that included it all. If you can answer this question, you're ready. If not, you have to answer 2 more. And it kept multiplying. So studying was sometimes 15, 20 minutes because they sort of raised me on the thing, do as little as you can to be good with. Yeah. So, but it was always very different because on tennis court, I just wanted to be there all the time. Yeah. And my one thing that my parents did tell me always from a young age was don't compare yourself to Canadian tennis players. Because I was always doing well on that level, but there wasn't that kind of historic success, especially in singles.
Well, that was going to be my next video. Who was your hero? Who did you look up to? Obviously not Canadian players.
Well, Pete Sampras was the biggest sort of idol, and somebody I actually mimicked quite a bit growing up, and still probably the person that I look videos of the most to sort of figure out how to improve and what I can do better.
Your forehands as good as him, a bit better than him. He serves right up there.
He has that running forehand that I wish I could have.
The running forehand across court.
You know where it is going, but
you can't do anything about it.
I would like to steal that one for a bit.
That's what I noticed when playing Pete. I actually didn't play him in my career. I played him in the Legends event, but I'd commentated on him so many matches. When I played him, I knew exactly where the ball was going. It was bizarre. I was like, I'm there, and the ball just went straight past.
But you're not.
It's just like, oh my god, that's a lot faster than I thought it was.
He was the one I looked up to the most by far.
For me, when I was growing up, it was like they couldn't get me off the court. Yeah. I'm guessing you were a little bit of the same.
Yeah, I think it was always.
But did you have, first of all, indoor courts?
Indoor courts.
What indoor courts did you play under? Was it a bubble? Was it a proper centre?
A bubble, and it was, from what I can remember, it was 3 courts, the backs facing sort of each other, 2 rows of 3. And when I started at 6 in the morning, the club wasn't open till 7. So they would turn on the lights for us, but they wouldn't turn on the heating.
Oh, yeah, God, okay.
And the bubble was cold all throughout. So the way we did it, my father obviously was completely dressed. He would walk around, just keep putting balls in the ball machine. I'd hit for 2 hours nonstop to get the most out of it, obviously, but then also to not get cold. And as soon as you stop, you start. feeling cold. So that was sort of the way I did it, and I guess it built up some kind of good resilience because it just got me used to going nonstop, and it just got me used to also never liking to stop, just sort of trying to get the most out of the time, because we always did have limited amount of hours of access to courts other than summertime.
And you always, so obviously you played mainly hard courts.
Pretty much, maybe a little bit of green clay the last few years I was there when my coach moved to a nicer club in the city where he was running the junior program.
So how did you feel when you were moving on to the clay? Was it a really learning experience?
Yeah, well, it was.
Did you go to Europe and spend months or?
No, I tried it a few times. The first professional matches I played on clay actually was straight in ATPs, because futures I didn't try too much, and then challengers I never played a clay court challenger, and in 2011 I already broke through, and all of a sudden you have to play them because you qualify for them, the Masters. So those were really the first ones, and I think where sometimes it can be my sort of biggest fault is I like to overthink things, and I tried to overthink the fact of coming to clay, where I started trying to change a little bit too many things, started getting myself stuck way too far behind the baseline, all these kind of things, rather than just focusing on changing the mentality that the ball's going to come back a bit more, but not what my intentions. And I think that was sort of my biggest thing that took me a while to learn, was that your intentions don't change, the way you execute them should change. That's the only thing, and it's like that going from surface to surface. Even when you switch hard courts, there's I think a lot more hard courts now that are so varying in speed. Some are quicker, some weak, some are bouncing high, some are not. So you always got to be adjusting a little bit, a little.
Yeah, it's interesting how even in a few years from when I grew up playing on clay, believe it or not, but on the clay in Australia, and I was like the best junior and European junior. I played clay, and then I played a whole season of grass and Davis Cup and everything, and I lost my ability to be consistent. But we were always taught to sort of slide in on balls. And then I was working for Tennis Australia, and they kept saying, you got to slide in, you got to slide in. And I've been watching, it was not that long ago, but I kept watching Rafa, I kept watching Roger, I kept watching Novak. And they didn't really slide into balls. It's almost like became started. They got to the ball, maybe did a little slide or hit the ball, and then did a little slide to stop. So it's actually movement had changed from when I was playing on the clay to now, and probably got to do a little bit with a lot of hard courts, but the movement had completely changed. So I pulled out all these videos and all these the coaching. I was with a coaching team. Coaches been telling us to slide in. And I went, guys, look, we're not teaching the kids the right way. We're teaching. Look at what these guys are doing.
There's a lot of guys that are sliding on hard courts as well.
Yeah,
you know, when you got to change directions, when guys are getting caught behind the baseline. Novak slides. You have obviously Monfils, who's an extraordinary athletic phenomenon. That also
made of rubber.
Yeah, but he also can slide. So I think it's changed. I think that actually I was watching Dominic Thiem was sliding to drop shots on grass courts.
Yeah.
So guys are sort of using that slide through the shot quite a bit now. You know, I guess it helps you get down, and maybe you don't have to do many stutter steps after to change directions.
Yeah, that's true. Now, for me, you seem like somebody who would analyse things very well. You're really focused on being as good as you can possibly be. Is that fair to say? I mean, I think it's a great trait.
I think it's really trying to get the most out of myself, and some of it's done out of pure motivation, some of it's done out of fear. I think the thing I would regret the most is if I'm done tennis and I feel like I didn't do exactly everything I possibly could.
Do you think having much older brother and sister, do you think that made you more competitive when you were growing up?
Probably because of my brother, not with my sister, but probably with my brother. Yeah, I was always looking to do something, and he sort of ended up being the one that was in front of me most of the time. So definitely that was a big aspect of it.
Interesting what you said there, because I remember hearing one of my coaches told me about Brian Godfrey, who is a very great, good American player, and he used to train unbelievably hard. And I said to him, I saw Brian, I said, why is he training so hard? He was quite older then. He said he believed doesn't want to look back at the end of his career and say, I wish I'd worked a little bit harder or been a bit smarter. And it's exactly the way I felt about my career. It's funny how we see that, aren't we, with players? And I think Andy Murray would probably say the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's a guy at the top that wouldn't say that.
Mm.
I don't know if they necessarily did it out of fear, but I think that would be their biggest regret.
Well, I did it out of fear. I mean, I think
for me it was
fear of losing. I hated losing.
Yeah, I to be honest, I hate losing more than I enjoy winning.
Yeah.
Sort of winning is sort of what you start. It was just the way I was raised. It was sort of what you expect.
That's exactly
what you sort of try to need to avoid. And sometimes I do dislike that trait about myself the most because it doesn't let you enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And it makes.
That's what this is about. This too shall pass. I mean, enjoy the moment. The good will go, the bad will go. Smell the roses. That's why I got it done. Exactly that reason.
And I think that's.
Did I smell the roses on the way through, Harriet?
Did, yeah.
I stopped and smell. I always stop and smell roses now because
I think that's the one thing, it's probably just because the people around me are quite different from me in that aspect. They try to remind me of that a lot on my team.
Mm. It's interesting. It's an interesting trait, but it's also a trait where you tend not to be can never be completely satisfied. So you're perfectionist.
Yeah, but also you don't find also you don't tend to be present a lot of the time.
Mm.
You tend to always. I find you finish a tournament, then you're automatically what's next.
Yeah.
And
you know what the words I said? I won Wimbledon. Sorry, I interrupt. I won Wimbledon. I came into the locker room, and my coach was there, my dad, and the tennis association, and I went to my coach after I hugged him. In my coach, I climbed up the stands. I went to the locker room afterwards, and I went up to him and go, "Let's go and win the US Open." So I said, I couldn't sit there in the Wimbledon locker room having just won Wimbledon. I said, let's go and win the US Open now.
What's wrong but at the moment you think it's the right thing, but then you sort of look back and I'm sure you probably wonder, I wish I could have just sat down there for 20 minutes if it was just that and enjoyed it a bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes it's draining.
It's draining.
And I think that's why sometimes I've struggled to play many consecutive tournaments because you automatically just keep jumping into the next one. You sort of need to force yourself out of it to sort of be able to really shut yourself off.
So I found exactly the same way. I mean, I peaked for the Grand Slams and I struggled with the other ones, but I didn't have a serve like you that could get me through some of these big tournaments. But the Grand Slams, do you see the other tournaments as a way to the Grand Slams for you to or do you see it as a stepping stone towards a Grand Slam? I mean, where is?
I think
what's the top of the list for you?
In my sort of 4, 5, I have 5 big goals for me every single year, and it's the 4 slams, Toronto or Montreal with the Canadian Open, and the year-end Masters. First of all, the first one is to be in it because that's a big sort of step to be there, and then obviously giving yourself a chance to excel there. Those are really the way I see the things, but I think it's my appreciation more and more, especially the more I've been around Roger, Novak, Rafa, Andy as well, for the Masters has grown. Because maybe on TV they're not mentioned, but when you look at Novak and you see he has 28, Rafa has 27, I'm not sure exactly what numbers they're at now. There's a lot of significance in those Master Series. Yes, there's a lot of them, and probably for the average tennis follower, it's hard to follow because sometimes you feel like there's just, there's one right after another. But those are pretty big things to sort of get a hold of. There's a lot of guys that are maybe going to be sitting around 3, 4, 5 that can, you do well in one of those, you win one of those, and that could set you up as far as your ranking goes for most of the year. 1,000 points takes you a long ways. With 3,200 points, you're in the year end, so you're finishing top 8. One of those gives you a third of the points you need. So I think they can sometimes get overlooked. So I don't tend to overlook them. Sometimes I struggle with them when they're so close back to back, because before and after Grand Slams, there's nothing in the sense of close to the level of validation with points of the Grand Slam. So I think sometimes they're clumped a little bit together too much. So you sort of get lost in, because even if you win it, you're, okay, I have to play again on Tuesday. What do I do now? And if you lose it, you're like, there's another one coming. So I think that's one of maybe the most tragic things for the Masters.
It's also one of the good things being a tennis player. I mean, we have 4 Olympic Games a year.
Yeah.
Don't we? Are you playing the Olympics?
Yes. You know, it's...
You're not a bad sport to be in, really.
Yeah, you know, it's for us, it's bigger. I'm sorry, but it's bigger than Olympics.
Yeah.
A Grand Slam will always be more of an indicator. Let's say if somebody was being considered for Hall of Fame or anything, than Olympics will be.
Yeah. No,
I think it's incredible, the 4 slams we have.
I can't agree more. Well, we can't let you go without talking about a couple of things. One, the John Mcenroe character.
Yes.
He seemed to be, I think it's fair to say that you seem to be different personalities. First of all, has John taught you how to throw a racket properly? Because he's thrown.
No, he hasn't. No, because the fines are considerably heavier on grass courts.
Okay, have you made a deal with him? How's this? Have you made a deal with him that if you do throw your racket, he will pay the fine?
No, because
I don't think it ever goes out. Because that could be a lot of rackets very quickly going through.
How did it come about? Did you call him? Did he?
I reached out.
Through his agent or to John?
No, it was directly. I've met him a few times in New York, spending time there. I reached out to him and just wanted to see if there was... I was really trying to exploit coming forward. I felt it was something I did well in Australia. And I felt it was something that, after I got hurt in Australia, that I lost a little bit, because when I did it in Australia, I did it well because I spent 4 weeks of the off-season really harping it into myself. But it wasn't to the point where it was something that became instinctual. So I got hurt after Australia, and then I was rushing back, obviously, because of the importance of Indian Wells in our rankings and so forth. Go back to tournament without much training, and it just wasn't there for me, like my serve is more instinctually, to be able to put myself forward. And then you go into clay, where it's obviously harder. And, you know, I felt like I needed to get that back, that sort of instinct of the first ball that's anywhere near the service line, that's your chance, go forward. And it doesn't matter if you are winning and losing 40 points of those points in a match where you do come forward, as long as you win 60 of them. You know, normally if you come in and you're winning about 60%, and I get a considerable amount of free points on my serve, if I can win 60% of the net, I'm going to be in good hands.
Yeah, it's for me, it's attacking play is a bit like it's a bit like Babe Ruth or Michael Jordan. I need to talk about how many times Babe Ruth struck out and missed, and how many 3-point shots Michael Jordan missed. But they both made a lot.
Yeah,
and
I think
sometimes you get gun shy. You get like, I missed one, I'm not going to come in again.
But I think it's, I guess the thing, at least that I've felt, is probably because of the generation I'm in right now and the kind of tennis we're always watching on TV. It's nicer to lose the point from the baseline than it is of getting past a clean winner.
It's not, you feel better about it.
Yeah, you feel better about it. When it's not, it's the same thing at the end of the day. So who cares if it's a ball flying by you because the guy hits a good shot, or if it's you stretching to a ball that you can't get enough behind and it floats into the net. At the end of the day, but in one of them, when the guy sort of stretches you, you can't hit a winner from there. But if you're at the net and you guess right, all of a sudden the guy's in trouble because he has his head down, he's trying to pass you, and then he's got to run to another ball because there's obviously a lot less time for the ball to come back. So one makes the other guy think, and losing the point the other way doesn't make the guy think too much. Because if you're 2 meters behind and you stretch out to hit a forehand and it goes in the net, the guy knows if he puts you there, maybe 1 in 20 you'll hit a winner. But he's going to be pretty calm about it. Whereas, if the guy passes you 20 times down the line, but you cover 5 or 6 of them, you're probably going to win most of those because he's probably out of position. So I think it was getting over this kind of, I don't know if it's an expectation more of this kind of reaction to getting past. At the end of the day, you're going to lose the point, but you might as well do it in a way that's a little bit more, wreaking a bit more havoc for the other guy.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's why I actually enjoyed that. That's why I became an attacking player, because one guy actually chip charged me when I was younger, he just chip charged everything, and I absolutely just shat myself and almost lost the match. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to play this way. Yeah. He made the court so small when he came to the net. Yeah. The court was shrunk. I had to hit the ball in 2 feet that side and 2 feet that side. Otherwise, I was going to lose the point. Yeah. And it literally shrinks the court to put the pressure on the opponent.
It shrinks the court, but also it just takes away the time from you. Mm. And I find that if you get passed and the guy can pass you 10 times backhand down the line at 15-0 or 15-love for them on their service game or whatever, it's very different trying to do it break point down or break point opportunity.
Sure.
Everything just, like you said, the windows just feel like they're sort of closing in on you, and the holes just of opportunity just get smaller and smaller. And if you don't hit it right, whereas if a guy's on the baseline, you might have another shot at that point. Whereas if you don't hit it right there and the guy knows what he's doing at the net, and I feel like I've improved that aspect of when I do get in front of me that I can't put it away. It seems like it's a little bit more daunting.
So is John trying to is he trying to get you to show a bit more emotion on the court as well, to be a bit more like he was as a player?
No, it's actually probably the opposite way. The one thing that I was surprised that John told me was his biggest sort of regret is that he didn't allow himself to enjoy himself more on court. And that's the first thing he told me when he arrived here was have fun out there. Because you'll look back and you won't have enjoyed it. And I was having fun out there, but I never allowed myself to have fun out there because I thought that was the way I needed to get things done, what he told me. And I think that's what I really tried, to get the most out of myself and to really be enjoying. And I tried to sort of incorporate that more in Queens. And it was something sort of I had to dig more for and try to remind myself of. But, at the end of the day, it's a pretty good gig to have.
Mm. It's a tough one.
I'm sure it's a tough one, but it's a good one at the end of the day. It's something we've tried to hone as best as we can. And I'm sure there's very few tennis players that you could tell them, how would I ask you? Here's your interview question.
Yeah.
If you could be 25 years old playing on tour again, would you do it?
Would I play?
No, if you could do it right now, tomorrow, we'll make 25 and you can play. And you can have a career, you would do it in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. It's about enjoying that time. And I think if you don't, it can pass by very quickly.
It does.
Yeah.
That's why I got that permanently on my arm. But it's funny because I was sitting with people I train with at Queens, and Peter Fleming sat down, and he hobbled down, and she said, "All you old guys, look at you wobbly, your legs, And she said, you looked at us both and said, would you do it again if you knew how much damage you'd done to your body?" And we both just didn't even think. We said, "Yeah, of course we'd do it again."
It's a good
you got to put your body on the line.
It's a very fortunate and rewarding and fun, most of all, thing to be in. Yeah, there's the pressures of you have to always feel like you have to be ready this week and that week, and then there's always aches, and then you have to manage those. Nobody can come in to substitute you, but for what you get for those moments of competing and playing where you sort of get in this element and you zone everything out that doesn't matter is all worth it.
Who's your worst critic?
Myself. Yeah, it's always that.
Wasn't it?
It's always that.
I thought that with you.
Yeah. I knew you weren't waiting for a miraculous name there.
Yeah, no, but I thought if there was a regret at the end of your career, I suppose you can't tell exactly what's going to be. But if you at the end of your career, what would you hate to say not done?
Well, not done everything I could have.
Not given it every shot, or not
given it, or tried every single thing to get the most out of myself. And I think people sometimes say, "Oh, now you're working with 3 people. How's that?" You're imagining. I have people around me that I feel can help me and that are going to try to get the most out of me, and that I don't think anybody can probably be as committed or as obsessed about it as I am, but they are to their own extent, and and people that really want to make a difference.
What's your personal relationship with John like? Is it true you visit art galleries together?
We visited one in London.
Do you like art?
Yeah.
Who's your favorite artist?
Probably Dan Colin, young American artist. Okay. I don't like his bird shit painting so much, but he has other paintings.
Bird shit paintings.
He has some bird. He has like these big sort of canvases. that covers in birdship.
Oh, okay.
Birdship paintings. But we went to the Victoria Mural Gallery. There was the Yayoi Kasuma exhibition that was there, which was nice to see. And I've grown into it just because of a group of friends that actually work in that side. I was not aware of it at all, and wasn't raised into it because my parents, obviously being engineers, was completely different things. I do have my great uncle, my mother's uncle, who's probably the most significant Montenegrin artist, who actually has a painting in Buckingham Palace, I believe, that he gifted when he came here one time. But I remember when I was young, I asked him, like, he has a house 7 floors, and I asked him, like, how did you get this? He's like, oh, I draw. I'm like, can you teach me to draw? That's about as seriously as I ever took it. But I've grown and really started to like it, and I've learned to appreciate the arts more from experiences I've had.
I like Salvador Dali.
Yeah. It feels like a dream every time. Like, if you close your eyes, it feels like he's tapping into a dream.
That's a Salvador Dali one there, and so is that Dali Rose, actually.
Okay.
So I figured if I'm going to get something done, get it done. Get some local guy who's kind of got a half degree in art. Get the greatest guys in the world and copy it. I want to have a bit of fun with you.
Yes.
Two more things, quick thing. The hair. I know you have a bit of fun with this. How come it doesn't move? You look like Superman, and I think you look what you do. You've got the Superman look about you, smooth, you're calm, your hair's.
I think it's an Australian brand. I will not name the brand, but I'll give you guys some credit there. It's just this hard. People think I spend like 20 minutes on my hair. It's like, get out of the shower, put this stuff in, comb it, and it doesn't move after. So the product takes care of the.
I'm impressed because I sweat and my hair's everywhere and it's saturated, dripping, and you play 4 hours in 40-degree heat.
It works. I believe one time. Actually, no, I did one time. I told Novak it was dried up kangaroo poo, and he believed me. No, that was good.
Oh, we love it. Thank you very much, right?
Thank you, I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun.
I hope you had a great time.
Questions?
Yes, of course.
Sorry.
He's almost got Scott 3.
No, there you go, I promise. Just looking forward to Wimbledon, obviously.
Yes. We didn't ask you about Wimbledon.
I
forgot about that. That's right, there's a tournament coming up.
We should probably touch on it. Obviously, you had great performance at the Australian Open where you took Andy Murray to 5 sets in that semi-final. And I suppose in some ways that's probably the closest you've come to that breakthrough. Do you feel like you're on the verge of that breakthrough?
Yeah, I feel like the things are coming together well. I'm doing the things well. I'm constantly improving. I'm there at the door knocking, and I'm sort of waiting for that opportunity to kick it open. And I think I've grown more and more tired of waiting for it to open, and rather than just wanting to push my way in. So I think that's why I'm very, very structured and aggressive of the way I go about my work ethic and about the way I go about every single little thing that I could do to give myself a chance to open that door.
How was Wimbledon compared to the Australian Open semi-final?
It was very different. It was very different. I didn't really allow much of an atmosphere to happen in that semi-final against Roger. I played the situation rather than playing the match, and I felt like I was with my own worst enemy at that time. The semi-final against Andy, I gave myself a chance there, and I sort of felt like I succumbed to myself at the end, but I put myself in that. I gave myself an opportunity. I didn't take it, but I gave myself that opportunity, which was 2 very different things. The other one, I was just there for the ride.
They're very different players, aren't they? I mean, Roger seems to rush, give you very little time. At least with Andy, you can
Andy lets you more in the match, but Andy, it's like Roger can destroy you quickly, and he'll sort of wear you down. I think that's their sort of thing about it. But I think also, I was just first time it happened. You're just going about the things, and you're trying to get as best. Second time, what you're doing.
Were you when you go out? I mean, when I played first semi-finals against John. And I was just happy to get some games on the board. Once I got to sort of 5-all, I was quite happy.
Where was it?
Here? At Wimbledon, yeah.
And
in 84, and he ended up slamming, killing.
You threw a shoulder, no?
Jimmy.
You threw a shoulder in that match.
Threw a shoulder?
On the changeover?
Oh, it wasn't quite like that. it wasn't quite like that.
There was some contact.
But there was, yeah.
He said he respected you more for that. He said, this guy's coming out here and he's going to try to take it from me.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, I used to give the crush handshake as well.
Yeah.
That was my thing. And always said,
Okay.
always had a strong shake. My dad always said, always give a very firm handshake. My dad had this big fat hand. I could never shake his hand. He was enormous, like a farmer.
Yeah.
And he used to shake people's hand, and he said, always give a firm handshake. Not that he did to women. But, so that was my thing. I'd be whether I won or lost. It's just a little bluff, but that was what we did back in those days. But
we miss it.
Oh yeah. So anyway, against Roger, you're a bit like in lights, a little bit like woof, and the next thing you know, I just wanted to get a few games and happy with that.
I wasn't happy with it, but I felt like I sort of allowed myself to fall into that. I think it was sort of like I started out right away with a breakdown in that match. I can remember very clearly. Then I got broken 2 times at 4-5, and I was trying to go with the flow too much rather than going out there trying to make something happen. And I think that was the biggest difference between the two stages that I gave myself. One, I tried to actually go there and create something for myself, create that opportunity. The other one, I was maybe waiting a bit too much for him to give it to me. Because I felt I was just playing well throughout that week. I'm in the semis, I must be playing well.
Yeah.
And they don't do that.
When you come off the court, do you kick yourself and go, you know what, I just could have done better. I could have got into the match.
I think that was the worst feeling I had on court. I probably felt a little bit worse in that match against Andy because I felt like, I really badly wanted it. I felt I was close. Then I got hurt. Then I couldn't really finish the way I wanted to the match. But against Roger, I was just like, I felt embarrassed, not because of what people saw, what I did to myself. And it was the worst feeling for that aspect because you didn't give yourself a chance to perform. You didn't, figuratively, you didn't show up to the court.
Yeah.
Looking forwards, Novak's obviously so dominant at the moment. Probably as dominant as any player has been since you came on the tour. Do you still have that belief that on your best day you can topple him?
Definitely. I think it's. I have the fortune with my game of having the guys adjust to me more than I adjust to them. And that's where I want to be. And I feel like I can take the game to him. And I think that's the beauty of it for me. And I just have to be efficient at the way I do that. And it's in that aspect, I feel like I could put the racket in the match really on my racket. And I think it makes it more fun for me. I'm not there waiting on the side. And I don't want to be there waiting on the side to see what he comes up with. I want to go out there trying to make something happen.